The best thing I think about urban gardening is it allows people who are living in suburbia to actually try to figure out where their food comes from. It's a really this strange generational disconnect that we're starting to see where generations before people weren't living in such concentrated areas of suburbia, so they would actually garden on their own, and also they would actually can and things like that. And we have whole generations of students who aren't aware of the fact that things like carrots grow on the ground. So that's why.
Therefore, when you urban garden, you don't just get a local food source. When you, for instance, in community gardens where you're using vacant lots, when you clean up a vacant lot, that's called beautification. When the people who are doing it talk to each other, that's communication, because they're talking to each other and watching out for this property, safety improves. As they learn to garden, that's education. As they create fresh, clean food, that's nutrition and health, because when you eat clean food, your health improves. When you growing your own food is like growing your own money, so therefore that's improved home economics. Money saved from your food bill can offset other bills in your home, attacking the issue of energy poverty. When you start to sell that crop, that's economic improvement and entrepreneurship and self-development, going to self-reliance. And when you celebrate your work, that builds pride and a new sense of place in your community. So you have achieved stabilized, revitalized communities, all by linking sustainability to solving a problem. People, profit, and planet apply to a problem.
Because Phoenix is a desert, having a lot of plants around is really good for cooling the environment, but then they also use water. And so I think that if we can replace some of the grass that we're just pouring water on with some food that we can actually use, I think that would be a really big benefit to the city.
I think that urban gardening in Phoenix is a huge thing because we seem to be one of those states where a lot of our produce isn't homegrown. A lot of the stuff that we buy in the stores, and so we just leave behind a huge carbon footprint when every time we go to a big supermarket and we buy produce that comes from Venezuela or Honduras or any other state for that matter. And if we're going to really make change and rely less on the fossil fuels that we're consuming extraordinary amounts of, then urban gardening is probably the best way to start. And it doesn't take a lot to get started. It's pretty simple to do, so I think it's something that we could definitely all benefit from that way.
If it could get rid of all the golf courses, I'd be really happy about that, but I don't think it will. I think the greatest benefit to Phoenix for me is probably related to my first answer, which is that Phoenix has grown so much. I'm a native. I've been here since 1968. And it's changed, and there's so many people who didn't grow up in Arizona, who don't have the Arizona history. And people come here from all these different places, and gardening is a community activity, so it can build community in Phoenix.
Well, it's interesting. I was just watching a video, and we've had him come to Chandler Gilbert Community College, Gary David, and he was talking about how the Arizona State's school sustainability, they concentrate a lot of things on photovoltaics, energy, etc. But he was pointing out, and I've heard statistics that are kind of similar, roughly about 35% of the energy cost are in moving foods. And so we could really solve some of these problems by just growing local and rethinking. I know that Gilbert right now, for example, still has land that was once farming and they're turning into houses. Where they should really think about how to create some type of urban gardening that could basically be self-sufficient, so we wouldn't have to, in a sense, import our food or tomatoes from Mexico and other places.
I think the greatest benefit of urban gardening for me has been connection with nature and connection with other humans. I started gardening because I would look at my hands while I was doing things, and I would think about, you know, I'm an internet worker, computer worker, a desk worker, and so I would look at my hands and I would think, my ancestors didn't do this. Like, there was such a great disconnect, and so gardening for me was a way to connect with the generations of humans before me. And then as I was gardening, especially doing a garden in my front yard, I've made so many connections with neighbors, people I don't know 2 streets over come by to say hi when I'm working in the garden, and so for me it's been the connection to the natural world and connection to other people.
So one of the major benefits is that you realize that what you've been doing, or the practices that you've been having somebody come out and spray for bugs, you realize, you know, I don't really want people to come out and do that. I'm going to pull my own weeds. It's not, you know, it's a lot of work, but if you're really going to grow as a human being, you've got to accept that things grow in the ground, and why are we trying to stop them? And the flip side is it gives you an opportunity to really decompress, and it's a form of meditation. It's a very meditative process to be out in the garden, whether it's picking weeds or having soil up to your elbows. It's very therapeutic, and we don't get enough of that. You know, our therapy tends to be television, and my therapy is being out there, putting some music on, bringing the banjo out or bringing the guitar out, and just sitting around the garden, and it's almost like you're, you know, spiritually singing to Mother Nature, and you're saying, you know, thank you for providing us with the soil that we have, and please please forgive those who are killing it, and allow us to help restore you back into one piece.
Personally, I like having fresh food. Sometimes I'll go to the grocery store, I'll buy salad or something like that, and then it's rotten a few days later. So this is really nice where I can just kind of pick leaves as I go. I know it's really fresh. I know that there's nothing on it. There's no pesticides on it. I like being able to show my son where food comes from and have him eat things that are really fresh. And it's also just sort of zen for me to come out here after a day at work when I've been sitting in an office all day. So just kind of coming out and digging around and pulling weeds is a nice way to end the day.
Personally, it's really helped me. When I grew up in Maryland as a child, and gardening was something that was easy. It was something we didn't even really think about. And I remember fall harvest and how we'd be sharing what we have with other people, and we'd have unlimited corn and tomatoes, and I mean just incredible amounts of food. And then I came to the desert, and I was like, wow, you know, how do you grow here? And because it's really extreme, and what it's really it's given me a connection to the earth that you wouldn't think living. You know, I like others. I live in suburbia. I have my little plot of land in the back, and I've just learned how I can start growing things pretty much year round if I do it properly. And so it's given me it's a kind of a sense of pride and ownership too with your community.
In my backyard, I have an aquaponics garden, about 50 square feet of plants and fish, and I could give you some pictures if you want. I have a project in education, 2 educational projects with the Valley View Orchard Community Learning Center, where we're using again aquaponics as a means of teaching STEM education, and the same thing on the Gila River Indian community. And I have several others that are in development to do the same thing, when possibly out in Buckeye. And I get phone calls there every day from more and more people who want to take advantage of this particular means of producing food, both in their backyard and possibly larger.
think it's the real key to it, and I think that when we look at cities right now, I went to Detroit 2 summers ago, and I was just looking at how the whole landscape has changed, and you see this decaying infrastructure, and I look at those old buildings, and most people would think of that as something bad, and I think of something that could be replenished, and you could actually start creating these farms that would be in an urban area, and that would solve some of the economic needs of Detroit. And the way those buildings, how big they are, if you look at Nancy Jack Todd and some of the ideas that she comes up with, you could actually turn one of those old buildings into something that's growing mushrooms, that's growing tilapia, that's growing herbs, tomatoes, squash, etc. It would be quite exciting.
Again, going back to being able to do things organically, I think that's definitely a component of sustainability. I would love to have chickens and be able to expand it and get eggs and things like that were organic and more nutritious as well. And I think the small scale multiple crop kind of feature that most home gardens have is better for the soil. But it's not something, I mean, this isn't something where I could sustain my family on it, and I think in a place like Phoenix that would be really hard to do. So I don't know how much of a solution it is. I think it's maybe part of the solution, but not the entire thing.
Well, I think that it's an obvious detriment to our society when we have big companies like Monsanto and Cargill that manufacture everything from chemicals to the food that we eat on a daily basis. And the fact that when you grow something at home, you're going to be the one eating it, so you're never going to do something that's potentially going to harm you or your family, or so I would imagine would be the case. And so you're not going to douse everything in pesticides and douse everything in herbicides and use toxins and components of Agent Orange. I mean, you're not going to make it into a science experiment, because any gardener who's been doing it for more than 1 or 2 years is going to be able to tell you that if you plant something and you water, it's going to grow, and you don't really need to get too creative with it.
There is an effort right now called Plan Phoenix. Every 10 years, by law, every city in Arizona must rewrite and represent its new general plan for the future to its population. The plans last for 10 years. So the way this works is that Phoenix has a general plan. Zoning follows the plan, development follows zoning. I was fortunate to be appointed by Mayor Stanton to this committee. I'm one of 18 citizens who are rewriting this plan that's going to be presented to the voters in 2015. And I'm pleased that we have the support of the mayor and of many others who recognize that community gardening, or more importantly, the more global term, which will be urban farming, because urban farming gives you the opportunity to look at both commercial and backyard and community gardens. I have a particular love for backyard gardens, because that moves the self-sufficiency, the food, the sustainability directly into the home. And one thing that we all have, anyone who has a home in Phoenix has a backyard. That's the nature of our area. It's not true in Washington and other places, but in Phoenix, everyone who has a home, whether they're renting or owning, has a backyard or a front yard. Okay, front yard farming is even more valuable. So, but I'm pleased that the city itself has recognized the value and power of urban farming, as far as providing food, as far as providing infill, reducing fugitive dust, economic opportunities. They're all there within the urban farming model, and the Phoenix appears in the people who have responded to the Plan Phoenix, the citizenry. When they write into us saying this is what we would like Phoenix to look like in the future, they've said we want community gardens, we want urban agriculture. And so I'm hoping that this, when the plan is written, this will be part of the complete urban mix for Phoenix, an active desire and encouragement for this kind of development to happen.
And it changes your spirit too. You can be really negative about the things that are going on, and then you realize that you get outside and and you think that the entire world is collapsing on a daily basis when you see things in the news, but you realize when you go outside and you're gardening that still doesn't change from day to day. You can still do that, and you can still give back to the planet, and you can take some from the planet, and you realize that if all these things go wrong and the world goes haywire, there will still be that opportunity to grow your own food and be sustainable in the process.
Yeah, what I think is kind of fascinating and I get excited about is how many different ways people are doing it. So there isn't one set blueprint of this is how you're supposed to farm, or this is how you're supposed to garden. But we see, different experiments going on throughout the city, and I'm always surprised when I go past a block and I all of a sudden see this, this piece of land that was just desolate before. Now someone's gone in who I don't even know who that is. It's got like an acre or two and it's growing things, and I think that slowly brings communities together.